You know, when a mass shooting event transpires like the one yesterday outside of Union Station, it can be incredibly hard to find the words to help children cope. Joining us now to explain how we can talk to our kids about yesterday's tragic event is Amanda Davis. She's the Director of Therapy Services over at St. Luke's Crittenden Children's Center. Amanda, welcome to the show. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, mass shootings are incredibly jarring for just about everybody, but how would a parent even begin to handle discussing something like this with their child?
Yeah, I think the most important thing as you start as a parent is to make sure that you're in a place to have that conversation before you start it. So
meaning
making sure that you take a deep breath, that you are at a place where you feel like you can be about as calm as you can be given the circumstances, because your kiddo's going to take their cues from you. So it's so important that you are in a prepared place.
You say that people who were physically injured at the event will have to recover both physically and mentally, but it often takes much longer to recover mentally. Elaborate on that, if you would.
Yeah, so what we know about the effects of trauma in the brain is that it really varies per individual, and so it's not quite as straightforward as maybe a medical injury might be, and that it really depends on how it was experienced by that individual. And when we talk about children, we know that their age makes a huge difference because our brain is still developing, and so they're at different stages of development, and as their brain continues to grow and mature, they will understand the events in a different way. And so it's something that may come up over and over again.
Are there some generalities here? Do kids who are younger, do they tend to bounce back mentally more quickly than kids who are a little bit older and know a little bit more?
It really depends on the kiddo and on their past experiences. So one of the things we know with younger children who have had trauma is oftentimes the impact is actually stronger the younger they are, because their brain is, it's not as developed yet. It's more of a kind of that blank slate idea where it's a much larger percentage of their experiences, if you think about it that way. And oftentimes they don't have the words to tell us the story of what happened. And so we tend to think they don't remember and there's not much impact, but actually the opposite is true. It still has a very strong impact in actually the formation of their brain and how their brain is built to work going forward.
So if you're a mom or dad of a child and you were down at the station yesterday when all heck broke out there, what would you do today? Would you wait for your child to raise the issue? Would you be a little more, would you get out in front of it? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend, if you were there, then clearly your child experienced something, right? And so I think the very first step is to just bring it up kind of casually in a calm moment. If you have older kids, the car is a really great place because you're not directly looking at each other and people tend to be more comfortable talking about difficult topics. But really checking in with them to see, what did you see, what did you hear, and how are you feeling about that? And that's a really good place to start because our experience as an adult is going to be really different than our kiddos was. So we want to know what their experience was.
I was thinking one thing that might complicate this is sort of social media. Older kids certainly are going to be trolling and looking around at seeing different things. And that might impact when you go to your child and have this conversation, I assume.
Yes, definitely. That's one of the reasons that we want to ask what they know, because we may not know what they saw on social media. And it may be completely false, but it also might be very true and have been very graphic. So we really want to start with what was their experience and what they know so that we know where to go from there.
So kind of open-ended questions, let them talk a little bit about what they're thinking and experiencing.
Exactly. And know that especially if they're younger children, they may not tell you much at the time. It may be a 2-minute conversation. It will probably come back in the next following days or weeks or months. Little children tend to digest trauma kind of like taking a bite of a cookie, where they do like one bite at a time. They just process what they can, and then new things will pop up.
So if the child just talks for a couple of minutes and then clearly wants to move on, you would let that happen, it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't force it.
No, don't force it. Let them move on. Let them go play, do their normal activities. And that doesn't necessarily mean they don't have more to say or more to think about, but that is also how kids process things. So they may give you a couple of sentences and then go play a game that maybe has some themes around safety or connection.
There's one point I wanted to really underscore here. From what I've read about this, is it's really important to emphasize that even kids who weren't there can be deeply impacted by the events of yesterday here, and that's something that parents need to grapple with here.
That is very much true, and that's part of why you ask them what they've heard. All of our kids are going to school today, and I guarantee you almost every school there will be some kind of conversation happening. And so we want to check in and see what they've heard and how they interpret that affecting them. I'll tell you for my own kiddos, because I had that conversation with them last night. They were not at the parade, but we talked about it, knowing.
How old are they? Okay.
They are 10 and almost 8.
Okay, so impressionable ages.
Yeah. And, my 10-year-old, we just kind of talked about it very matter-of-factly. She's had an experience like this before. And so she kind of related it back to that. My almost 8-year-old's response was, well, I think I just won't go to parade so I can stay safe. And so that was his way of dealing with it, was saying, I'm going to do this to keep myself safe in the future.
What about this idea of trying to protect kids from this information? Is that something that parents should be thinking about today?
I mean, I think it is to some extent. You want to do your best to make sure they're not seeing all of the proliferation of videos that are out there of what happened. We know that watching a video of a traumatic event, this came from the 9/11 event actually, that people who watched those individuals who jumped out of the building, they actually had a higher rate of PTSD than people who just heard about it on the news. And so it is important to monitor their video consumption to make sure they're not witnessing things. It's unrealistic probably to think you can completely protect them from knowing this happened. It's going to be talked about absolutely everywhere in the community today.
Do you have any sense of how schools might be dealing with this event of yesterday? I assume that teachers, maybe really across the board of all the different grade levels, are probably going to say something, or am I wrong about that?
No, I think you're completely right. I know that as a parent, I received an email from our superintendent
already?
Last night.
Wow.
That was very, really summarized what happened, expressed condolences, and really ended with a message of positivity that we will get through this together. And I expect that all of these school counselors and social workers have all been talking since yesterday about how they were going to approach this today.
Going forward, Amanda, what are some signs of anxiety that parents might want to look out for as they monitor their kids every day?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you will see some minor things in the next few days. Probably what we're most concerned about is when it extends. That's when we're looking to, hey, this might be somewhere we need to reach out for more professional help. And the number one thing to look for with kids is their inability to do their normal life. So if they're having trouble getting to school, paying attention in school, they don't want to hang out with friends, they don't want to go to their soccer practice, things that would be outside of the norm for them, that would be a sign that, hey, maybe it's time to reach out and see if we need some more help.
Is there value in reminding kids that there are lots of good people still left out in the world?
Oh, yeah. Got to go back to Fred Rogers and you look for the helpers. And I think one of the excellent things about the events that happened yesterday was that not only were there loads of professional helpers there were also so many just everyday citizens that were helping to console children who were lost or scared. They were providing life-saving medical services with CPR. And even there were quite a few stories about the Chiefs players consoling kids. And so I think that really emphasizing that it doesn't even have to be somebody who does this for their job. The people in our community love each other and care about each other and take care of each other.
I think I can say this safely. Chris Ketch from Channel 9, we were talking before the show, and I was pointing out that, the older I get, these things hit me a lot harder than they used to. And it surprises me. I used to cover police, and it was just one story after another. But maybe you get a little bit older, a little more reflective, and it hits me in a way it's not hit me before. And Chris said he feels the same way.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I mean, as we get older, our perspective and our experiences really shape how we understand things that happen to us. And so we look at previous things that we've experienced and we know what that might look like 5 or 10 years down the road for somebody who experienced a traumatic event like this. And so the more experiences you've had like that, where you've seen the longer term effects, it's going to hit you harder and differently. And that's going to be true for our kiddos who are there. They have increased understanding as they grow older. When they have their own kids, they may have anxiety taking their own kids to a parade.
Isn't that something? Amanda Davis, she's Director of Therapy Services over at St. Luke's Crittenden Children's Center. Thanks so much for your time today, Amanda. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
And joining us now is the Reverend